Yo, what is good, Knicks Nation? Welcome back to another Knicks Media live stream, and I'm joined by John and Alex once again. This is their second time on the channel. These guys have a podcast all about the Jets and the Knicks and a little bit of Yankees. So you guys know them very well. Alex is on Knicks Fan TV all the time. John has been on the channel. He writes for Jets Press. You guys know who they are. But how are you guys doing today, man? We're coming off a Knicks victory last night. Finally, we got a lot to talk about with this Knicks club, guys. We're 8-6. We're feeling good. We're not feeling as good as we hoped, but I'm feeling pretty good about these Knicks. So, John, we'll start off with you. How you feel, my man?
Dude, like you mentioned, finally something to celebrate. Like, thank you for having us on. Perfect timing. All three of us have been going through a little rut with our teams, and finally the Knicks are here to pick us up, man. Nice little win in Indiana. I like it.
Yeah, last night was a must-win, and we got that dub thanks to the defense. How about that? Alex, how you doing, my man?
Doing well, Richie. Thank you again for having us on. And, man, I'm feeling great, man. We got an old classic 90s style game against the Indiana Pacers, just what everyone wanted. We're 8-6, as you already pointed out. You know, things could be a little bit better, but starters got to shake things out a little bit. But our second unit, man, just loving everything about it.
It is crazy what the second unit is doing, and it's like it's the best five in the entire league. And I tweeted out, can we just turn off fatigue in 2K and put those five guys out there for 48 minutes straight, because they're so fun to watch. So shout out to everybody tuning into the chat. What's up, Kelvin, Bruce, Buzzer Beater, AB? What is good, everybody? Shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure you guys thumbs up the stream on your way in. We're just getting started. So, guys, the Knicks are 8-6 on the season. We've had a really interesting start, guys. So we start out, 5-1? And, you know, Knicks fans are on top of the world. The Bing Bong videos going viral all over the place. And then ever since that, it seemed like we were going on a little up and down hill. We get a lot of hot streaks from certain players, cold streaks from certain players. You know, RJ Barrett went on that 5-game stretch when he had 20-plus points in every single game. Now he's in a little rut of his own. Kemba Walker started off the season red hot. He's going through a little rut of his own, even though he seems like he's breaking out of it. The defense looks like it's been losing its identity as of late, but last night they finally got back. So obviously there's so much to jam-pack into this Knicks 8-6 record. So, John, I'll start off with you. What's your overall thoughts about the Knicks so far throughout the first 14 games of the season?
All right, so that was a lot to take in. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, right? For just 14 games, I feel like it's been like 4 seasons, right? Just in these 14 games. Feels like a football season out here. But the Knicks, man, they're not what we thought they were, right? It's a completely different approach to the game, right? You're so excited that we played good defense for the first time, which is so opposite, right? We're usually so used to having a good defense, and luckily we have an offensive surge, you know, here or there. So it's really opposite. But the one thing that has been constant is IQ, man. Riding that second unit, like when you talk second unit, you're really just saying IQ, because without him, there is no second unit. And it's the same old story, man. It's the same old story from last year. And I'm just wondering, at what point is he just our guy? Like, at what point is he just our starting point guard?
So you're really high in IQ. I love that. I love that, because some people were already writing him off after that little dry spell he started off with. And I was like, please do not be so reactive over a 5-game sample size. So, Alex, how you feeling about this Knicks start to the season? Obviously, there's so much to jam-pack. Like John said, it feels like we've watched 3 seasons, but it's been only 14 games. So in a nutshell, what's your overall thoughts about this team so far?
Oh, man. I mean, there's a lot to go on about this team, especially when you watch the starters. You just don't see them gelling as of right now. It feels like it's every other night we're rolling on somebody, whether it's 1 or 2 guys. Start of the season was Randle and Evan Fournier. Now we're getting the Kemba surge. You talked about RJ having a 5-game streak. It's going up and down. I think everyone's still trying to get, in rhythm with one another. So we have that, storyline going along. As we already talked about, we have the second unit that's just gangbusters. Doesn't matter who's out there. You could talk about D Rose. You could talk about Emmanuel quickly. You could talk about Obi Toppin, who we can just ask for more minutes. That's another storyline. There's so many storylines with this Knicks team. I feel like that's the best way to put it. There's a lot of storylines, whether it's Obi trying to get more minutes, Emmanuel quickly just starting to come into his own, Derrick Rose being, the MVP as of right now, holding down the entire team. You have the starters who are just in a funk. Everyone's just trying to figure it out. There's just so much going on with this team. Honestly, that's really just the best way to put it. So much going on within 14 games.
Yeah, it really is. And I know that's a loaded question because it's 14 games in. And like you said, Alex, there's so many different storylines that we can talk about, whether it's the starter struggling, whether it's the bench unit looking so good, whether it's the defense not being as what we once was last year, whether it was a 3-point barrage that we started off the season with. We look like one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league. And then we kind of come down to earth right now, but I still like where this Knicks team is going or headed with that 3-point line, the range. You can see that they're shooting a lot and they're making a lot. But I feel like the Knicks, me personally, what I'm looking for with this Knicks team, the biggest reason why the bench unit is playing so well together, in my opinion, is simply because of continuity. And all 5 of those guys, and whether it's Taj or Nerlens at that 5 spot, they all played together last year. And that's a big component of why they're playing so well together. Also, the personnel has been really spectacular. Derrick Rose, along with year number 2 of IQ and Obi Toppin, Alec Burks' Swiss Army knife. He is so valuable to that bench unit. Taj Gibson, you cannot even say enough good things about him, and even including Nerlens Noel when he is healthy. Those guys all played together last year. This is, year number 2 with the same system, with the same people around them. And then with the starters, we're seeing, 5 guys that are not used to playing with each other. Obviously, we know Kemba and Evan Fournier are the 2 new players to the starting lineup. And RJ and Julius and Mitch, they've played together, but they're still trying to get comfortable with Kemba and Evan Fournier. And I feel like this season is going to be all about those starting 5 getting chemistry as the season progresses. And that's a big thing that, if you remember last year, guys, the Knicks started 5-8. It took a little time for this Knicks team to really start to gel together. And I feel like that's a common theme of Tom Thibodeau's style of teams is as the season goes on, they get bought into the system even more. They get comfortable together and you see them progress. And all of a sudden the Knicks are on a 9-game win streak late last year in April. So let's talk about the Knicks starters because that's definitely the biggest headline that Knicks fans want to talk about. We're clamoring for some lineup changes. We want this guy to start now. But the way I look at it is, same way I looked at it last year. Whoever starts the game does not mean they're going to finish the game. And Thibodeau had a really great lineup last night, late in that 4th quarter, which consisted of D Rose, IQ, RJ, Julius, and Taj Gibson. And Alec Burks was in and out as well. And I really like that Tom Thibodeau was not stubborn on, starters at the last 5. He really adapts on the fly. So, John, what do you think is the biggest issue with the starting 5? What needs to change? Is it the chemistry? Is it lack of ball movement? Is it the defense? What do you think needs to be done in order for these starters to get back on track?
So that's a great question. And I think the obvious answer, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, is the Fournier versus Alec Burks situation where we kind of need whatever Alec Burks is, that Swiss Army knife, we need Fournier to bring that. And we knew he was going to be a decline on defense. I just don't think that we anticipated how much of a decline it was going to be. And the offense really isn't there to make it up. So I think it's easy to call out Fournier. And I think it's really difficult to call out our boy, RJ Barrett, right? Because he's our boy and we love him and we're trying to, take him to the next level. We're trying to ride that wave with him. And we're really giving him all the benefit of the doubt. But at some point, we have to say something about him dropping 2 points, a half is becoming more of something I should be used to rather than, oh my goodness, I can't believe RJ's having a bad half. I can't believe RJ's shooting 30% right now. And luckily yesterday he saved us versus the Pacers. He completely washed that over. If you look at the box score and then you look at, let's say, social media or the highlights, you would literally think you had the stats to the wrong game, right? So I'll give him credit for that, where he's able to pick it up even though he's having a bad game and get it together. But on a day-to-day basis, man, it's easy to blame Evan Fournier. It's easy to look at Julius Randle, but I'm gonna say it's really up to RJ. If it's all about RJ snubbed, RJ, is our guy, and he has to show up sometimes. If it's not for him, at least for the fans, right? I mean, we're sticking our neck out for him. we're on every list. We're fighting everyone, and then he's coming out and he's going 3 for 13, man. Like, what do you? So I think a little boost from him would go a long way.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of people in that starting lineup, including RJ Barrett, has not had the greatest start to the season individually or them as a starting five collectively. So, Alex, what's your thoughts about the starters? Obviously, there's a lot of things that you can break down what the issues are. So, what's the biggest thing that you need the starters to work on in order for these, those five to start clicking?
I think it started off with Stephen Bondi's article with the Daily News. Well, for the Daily News article yesterday, where Tom Thibodeau this past weekend started implementing some sets. Maybe it wasn't him himself, but having, Johnny Bryant or his coaching staff just say, hey, we got to get these guys into rhythm, because what Tibbs mentioned is that these guys were freelancing most of the time, and these aren't the guys to have freelancing most of the time. These guys aren't LeBron James, Dwayne Wade. Most of those guys who are capable of just handling the rock, orchestrating the offense, and taking that team to another level. These guys, think about where they're coming from, whether it's Randall coming from Kentucky, you got RJ coming from Duke. You're talking about guys who are coming from systems that are very not super strict, but they're strict enough where everyone has a role and everyone has a distinct role within that system, right? And I think for these guys, they just need to come out that way in order to get into rhythm. We see a lot of Julius Randle bringing up the ball and then giving it back to him and try and figure it out. And then the last thing we get is, ISO Randle, and then we're just going nuts. Like, why are we doing ISO Randle? Randle is not LeBron James here. And then we're asking Kemba Walker, why is it Kemba Walker doing the point guard stuff and distributing and facilitating and playmaking for everybody? And I think it comes down to, one, trust with each other, two, actually giving these guys something to work with at the same time. So we saw that yesterday, how they started off the game against the Indiana Pacers. We saw a lot more action. We saw a lot more sets, guys getting into rhythm. We still can complain, as John talked about, for Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier was still not taking the amount of shots that he's getting paid to take. He needs to take more than just 9 shots a game, and he's doing too much pump faking, driving, and just trying to facilitate. No one's going to bite on your facilitating unless you're actually taking shots and knocking some shots down. I think there's definitely a lot that goes into it, but I think it starts with, we need just an offensive system to create that identity, especially if we're going to take this uptick in shooting threes. You can't just shoot threes and then rely on somebody else like Randall. You have to have something that goes with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. You want to respond to that, John?
No, I actually have a question for both of you guys. So, if this is the case, why is it that, we could kind of start hot with somebody maybe like Kemba, that he's been going into this flow of like trying to, get hot a little bit early, and maybe we're okay in the first quarter, and those are our starters. But what happens in the third quarter, guys? Like, what happens when they come out of there in the second half? Like, could someone explain to me? Because I'm not even joking. I think it's like 7 games now where it's not even a competitive third quarter. It's a Jets third quarter out there. So, like, someone explain
don't bring
to me,
them into this.
Someone explain to me what happens at halftime, and more specifically, what happens with these starters, right? Because it's the same people, it's the same players, but what happens in the first quarter and the third quarter?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer to that, and I wish the Knicks had it. Well, the Knicks better have an answer to that question, because you're right. It's been a lot of games in a row where you're just waiting for the first 5 minutes of that third quarter to go south. That's exactly what happened last night. And I was watching a game with my friend when we were down by 12 points, and I'm like, yo, the only way the Knicks get back in this game is whenever the bench comes in, because we're going to keep losing the lead and get, down even more points until D Rose, Obi, and Quickly come in. And it's kind of like, it's a weird problem to have, because it's a good problem, but a bad problem at the same time, that our bench is that good and our starters have been that bad, or should I say that inconsistent, because the starters have definitely showed flashes of, competent and really good, basketball defensively and offensively, but it hasn't been consistent, and it's been more bad than good. So I think they just have to have more fire and desire and really hone in on the defensive side of the ball, because I feel like there's a lot of times where they get beat down low, or there's so many times where I see wide open threes from the opposing teams, and it just makes me scratch my head. And I know Thibodeau's system is kind of like, all right, we'll give you some of those threes because they're not going to go in all that time. But there's some times where the defensive identity is just lacking, in my opinion, especially in that third quarter. So, Alex, what do you think is the biggest issue with that third quarter? Because we're calling it the third quarter of doom at this point.
I feel like I've been calling it the third quarter of doom for what feels like an eternity at this point.
Yeah. But last year, I feel like we got rid of it, bro. I thought that we sweat out that fever and we were good to go now with this whole third quarter business, Tibbs. But no, we are back to our old ways.
Nah, we don't have to bring out certain point guard that was here on this team last season and watch us just squander another lead in the third. Yeah, I know. I think it really comes down to energy on defense, right? I think these guys, the identity last season was that they played so hard on defense that once they came out in the third quarter, that everything they do defensively would translate into offense. Now I think that they're relying so heavy on offense. And thank God for the good game last night because they were in the tank for defense. Now we're talking about them being 17th defensively in the NBA after one game, which is insane to even think about. Hold a team under 100 points, and that's what you get.
It's about time.
Today's NBA.
Today's NBA. But I think it really just comes down to energy on the defensive side, and I think I think that's really what it comes down to. Because if they were just locked in defensively, things will turn around on offense. This team is yet to gel where everyone's just figured out the rhythm for like who gets the ball and where they get the ball and the starters. Mm-hmm. I think if they could just understand just to buy in, and it's rough to say defensively when, I'm going to say, like I'll say his name, Elfrid Payton is a better defensive point guard than what we had than Kemba Walker. And it's not, I know, right? But it's not even like a far stretch too, right? I mean, we're supposed to upgrade offensively, and we have. Right. Last night we get 16 from Kemba Walker in 20 minutes, and I think if that's what we get for the entire season, we're in good hands.
Yeah.
But defensively, these guys just got to come out with energy, and that will translate to offense. Just really hold them down because I feel that they come out of the half just looking to shoot again, and that's just so hard to do. This team is not really there yet to be that type of offensive juggernaut.
I agree. And a quick shout out to JD Sports Talk, the man. I appreciate the support, bro. I'd actually love to have you on the stream one time. So let me know, JD Sports Talk. Love your content. So shout out to JD Sports Talk, of course. Appreciate the support, man. And of course, shout out to everybody else in the chat. Hope you guys are enjoying tonight. Make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button on your way in. We're just getting started on the live stream. So another thing we want to talk about the defense really quick. Something that I noticed from this Knicks defense that kind of drives me crazy is it's part of the system, but it feels like it's just not working at this given time. Is they switch a lot, they double team a lot, and that's giving them wide open opportunities. And there's so many times where I see the Knicks like just double team someone where that don't deserve to be double teamed, and it gives up a wide open three, and that just makes me go crazy. And it's like repeated, and I don't know if that's part of the system, and that's Thibodeau's like mindset. That's okay, but I feel like that needs to be fixed for sure. But now switching over to the bench, because this is positive. The starters have been parable. They're, always minus in the plus-minus category. The bench is a completely different animal. You could talk about D. Rose. You could talk about IQ, Burks, Obi Toppin, Taj Nerlens. I mean, these five together are just so special to watch. And Derrick Rose is the head of the snake. He's the guy he's the floor general. He connects everybody together. He feeds Obi Toppin the ball. Finally, Obi Toppin's making that next step. John, I know that you're one of the bigger Obi fans. You always have been. And, of course, Knicks fans are all Obi fans. Look at that T-shirt, baby. We're loving what Obi Toppin's bringing to this team. The energy, the spark club's ridiculous. He deserves so many more minutes on the floor. But I guess it's a good problem to have that we do have a guy in Julius Randle where it's hard for Obi to get those minutes. And then Emmanuel quickly in year number 2. We talked about it earlier in the stream, guys. He is taking that next step. His ball handling is taking that next step. He's sizing people up. His floaters are back. The three-point jump shot. The defense is probably the most impressive part about Emmanuel quickly in year number 2, in my opinion, because that's what's going to give him the minutes in order for him to become an actual piece for this next team for the future is his defense. And I feel like that's the biggest underrated part to his game. His playmaking is also making a big step. Emmanuel quickly is so impressive. And then Alec Burks is just that simple Swiss Army knife guy that can do literally everything. He can guard any position. He can run the point. He can knock down the shot. He can drive to the rim. He can put the ball on the floor. He can play make. He can rebound. I mean, there's not a lot of things Burks cannot do. So he's probably the unsung hero of that bench unit if I had to give that accolade to one. So we'll start off with you, Alex, on this one. What's your thoughts about this bench unit? Why is it so fun to watch these five out there? And they're just so good. So give us your thoughts about what is the reason why these five players are playing so well together.
I think it's the best team basketball that we've seen, man, watching this group. Like, it is so much fun. You said it already. Like, Derrick Rose being the head of the snake, just how he facilitates, how he attacks the paint, how he can just create for everyone offensively is just – it's just a piece of art, man. Like how he really like changed his game from being that aggressive point guard when he was on the Chicago Bulls to now being more of a finesse player. Absolutely stunning. And I love everything about it. That's why I got a City Edition jersey. Happy I did. But I think for like, it just comes down to simple like team basketball. Like you have Taj doing his role. He's doing the dirty work, was setting hard screens, getting the rebounds, getting the boards. You have Obi Toppin and Derrick Rose is looking for Obi Toppin. And honestly, Derrick Rose is also coaching these guys on the court as we watch him at the same time. Like he is truly the mentor that everything. He's like, I remember, I think it was in the fourth quarter. He's looking at quickly like, yo, come on, man. Like, come on, let's push the pace. Let's get down there. Let's get this shot off because he just sees it. He's doing everything you want from that point guard to do. He's looking at the floor, really just like internalizing everything and being able to facilitate. I think it's, as you pointed, Richie, it starts off there and then everything else falls into place, whether it's Emmanuel quickly hitting his shots and playing just top-tier defense, being probably one of our best perimeter defenders on this team, just being a ruthless dog. You have the article that Ian Begley dropped today that even Tom Thibodeau mentioned that Emmanuel quickly is an underrated defender. And we saw this during the Summer League too, where he was getting back and just hounding guys, just going around screens, trailing on their hip, trying to stay in front of them, trying to, attack just the passing lanes and try to get the steal. He's doing everything and just being tenacious. And then Obi Toppin, dude's just a phenomenal athlete. When you have a four that can run up and down the floor and just slam dunk, I mean, I'm still happy over that windmill dunk against the Charlotte Hornets. And you have guys like that, and he can bring up the ball too, just so dynamic. Everything about that unit is dynamic. And as you said, Alec Burks, Swiss Army knife, anything you need. We saw him defending Malcolm Brogdon last night. We needed someone to stop Malcolm Brogdon because he was taking advantage of Kemba Walker. And he comes out there and he's like, I'll try my best, but I got something for you. All right. And it's really what that five is. There's a reason why they're a plus 27.6 differentials because their offense and their defense just complement each other. You watch them as a defense, they're on a string. Everyone's communicating, running back and forth, and Taj is like the periscope submarine just leading those guys. So overall, it's just great team basketball.
Man, we could talk about this bench for the rest of the
absolutely
the entire series. It's so fun. It's so fun. John, what's the most thing that you're impressed by from this bench unit? Is your guy Obi? Is it Quick? Like, who is it?
So I think it's Quick just because he has not only D Rose in front of him, but Kemba Walker, right? And as much as it's easy to tweet, about their box scores every night, it must be hard to practice with those guys, to be around those guys. I mean, think about it. We grew up watching them, and we're older than these guys, so they grew up praising D Rose and Kemba Walker. So I think it's pretty awesome that he's able to just quell all that. He's the easiest guy that could have fell behind in this rotation so easily. Like if he was coming out and he was playing bad, they could have easily just buried him. We have another rookie coming in, and a point guard plays defense. Like it would be so easy for him to just fall behind. So I'm glad and a little bit, pleasantly surprised of how well IQ's playing, right? Because again, just so easy for him to just be lazy about it. But thankfully he's not. On the other side, there's Obi. Man, Obi, he's in such a weird position, man, because he's obviously the same exact player as Julius Randle. Like, it's obvious, right? Go watch Lakers Randle. You are literally watching Obi Toppin, okay? And the problem is you're trying to get them together on the court at the same time. So it kind of transitions me into, you're asking me about the bench unit, and funny, you kind of slipped it in, but you don't like how we're switching on defense, right? And I mean, I don't know. Luckily for you, I guess Mitch Robinson, our number one, switch defender, he has an ankle, so he might be out for a couple days. I'm wondering if this is the time, if this is the opportunity that we're able to see Obi and Randle together for an extended time. And conversely, if people are playing us too big, I wonder if we can get Obi, Randle, and a 5. Like Taj in there or something to get boards in. Like, what do you guys? I know this has been a hot topic on Knicks, Jets, etc. For Alex and I. So Richie, like, what do you think about that, man?
Obi at the 3, Randle at the
Obi
4.
at the 3 or the 5. Like, yeah, either of those scenarios.
Well, yeah, I think you got to give Obi time with Randle. We saw a little bit of it last night because when Mitchell Robinson went down to an injury, Thibodeau had to be creative with the rotations to the fourth quarter. And it sucks, man. It's such a weird situation. Like you said, like Obi Toppin is ready for that next step. Like he's in year number 2 right now. He's comfortable. Everything we expected Obi Toppin to be in his rookie season is what he's doing right now because Knicks fans saw that Obi Toppin was the college player of the year. He's an older rookie. We thought that he's going to be able to adapt on the fly, which is a little premature. A lot of things did not go in his favor last year for Obi, but now he's taken that next step. And the one thing that I think that's holding Obi Toppin back for just becoming like an actual breakout candidate is his 3-point shooting. I think whenever that starts to fall, he's going to be hard to take off the court because he's letting him fly as he should. He should not stop shooting. I know that they're not falling right now, but let them shoot because let Obi Toppin continuously shoot those 3-pointers. Not saying shoot like 5 a game, but shoot 2 or 3 a game. And I'm sure he'll start finding his confidence from downtown because that's what's really going to make him a big problem. Because if you have to worry about Obi Toppin the 3-point line and he can just blow by you and absolutely do a windmill between the legs, 360 dunk on your ass. So Obi Toppin is an absolute highlight reel waiting to happen. And to answer your question, I'm very open to the idea of being creative with rotations. Let Obi Toppin out there with Randle. Why not try out Gibson at the 5 with Obi and Randle on the court as well? Maybe with a smaller backcourt like Quickly and D Rose or something like that. I feel like Obi Toppin needs minutes, and it's unfortunate that he's not getting the minutes he deserves because we have a guy, Julius Randle, ahead of him who is, more established, and he is the leader of this team right now. So that segues into my next topic. I want to talk about Julius Randle because he's had a very interesting start to the season. He's not having this typical Julius Randle year that he did last year, but he's still doing a lot of the same things. You can tell that the Knicks are running the offense through him. He brings the ball up. He's the point forward. He leads the team in points. He leads the team in rebounds. He leads the team in assists. He leads the team in turnovers. So Julius Randle is doing everything for this Knicks team. Last night, I was very impressed with Julius Randle because he did not do anything when it comes to scoring the ball. His shot was not on, 5 of 15. All 5 of those, I think, were like just bully ball, layups down low and ones. He really sacrificed his body last night. If you saw what Randle did in that fourth quarter, he was a big reason why the Knicks won this game. His defense was next level. His rebounding, his tenacity in the paint. He was throwing his body out there, sacrificing himself, put the team first. And that's what you need to be able to do to win ball games. And how many times have we heard Tom Thibodeau say, we need to make sure every single game we focus on rebounding and defense and hustle plays because the shots are not going to fall every game. But if we hone in on those fundamentals, we're going to be in every single game. And that's exactly what I saw from Julius Randle last night. His shot was not falling, but he was putting his all in there. So the one criticism I do have with Julius, he's definitely a little careless with the ball. He's averaging over 3 turnovers per game, and that needs to be cleaned up. He tries to do a little too much for my liking, but I think that's going to, as the season goes on, I think that's going to be cleaned up, but that's just part of Julius Randle. I feel like we can all agree with that. So, Alex, what's your assessment on Julius Randle so far this season? He's, the head of the snake right now. He's had a lot of good games, a lot of bad games, and a lot of games in the middle. So what's your thoughts about Julius Randle so far this year?
I think for Julius Randle, actually Derrick Rose said it the best. Derrick Rose said, for Randle, he is the leader, right? I can't quote him specifically, but he said that, Randle is the leader. It takes time for him to adjust, especially when you have 3 new starters. Sure, Mitch started games last season, but he missed most of last season with an injury. Now you have Kemba Walker, you have Evan Fournier added to the mix, and he's trying to figure out how to be the guy again and take it to another level, right? He had to be the guy, and RJ was his Robin last season, but he was the offense last season. Now it's taking that next level and not just being the offense, but being that facilitator as well. It seems like that the Knicks wanted to be. And that just takes some time for him to adjust. I mean, once again, we're talking about the starting unit just being able to gel, figuring out something. I think these guys need more sets in order for them to get a little bit more comfortable. But Randle himself, I think it's a lot on his plate. I think it's just another, when he came here his first season, he was asked to be a point forward. Never been a point forward before. Second season, all right, so now he has point forward under his belt. Now he has to be the offense, and he's used to doing offense from being like part of like the a big offensive system, whether it was on the Lakers or New Orleans. So it wasn't that too much of an adaptation for him, especially when no one else in that starting unit outside of R.J. Barrett and Reggie Bullock were the other offensive contributors. Now we're talking about, all right, Randall, we need you to be a playmaker. We need you to be the scorer, and we need you to be a rebounder and everything else. And I think that's just a lot for him as a responsibility that he's not used to. So just Derrick Rose said it best, that he's just trying to, it's all on him, but he's got to figure out how to not have it all on him and, be able to distribute and give it to everybody else.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. I'm happy you mentioned that D Rose quote, because the one thing that Randall said that he worked on the most in the offseason, and something that he learned from about the playoffs, is try not to overcomplicate things, because he knows that he's now the number one option for this team. So the defense is going to be honing in on him. And now he has a lot of responsibility to make sure he knows what to do with the ball when he does get double teamed, how to get his teammates involved, know when to put up the shots, know when not to put up the shots. So Julius had a very interesting start to the season. John, what's your thoughts about Julius Randle throughout the first 14 games? And do you think the best is yet to come for him this year?
I mean, it better be, right? The best is better yet to come, because here's the thing. And as much as I want to rag on Julius Randle because he's our all-star, it's so hard for me to blame him, because we're asking him to do so much, as Alex alluded to. We go down the court when we're stagnant and we just give the ball to Julius with 10 seconds left on the shot clock, and then we get mad at him when he shoots it. Like, what do you want him to do? Or if he turns the ball over because he's trying to make something happen out of nothing. And it's just not what this Knicks team can do. This Knicks team can't facilitate a half-court offense with 10 seconds left by just giving it to Randle. That's just not how Tibbs does things. And for that reason, I think it's not really fair. At one point, we want to bench him for Obi Toppin. As much as I love Obi Toppin, I'm wearing his shirt, I'm leading the Obi Toppin parade. I can't bench Julius Randle in the fourth quarter for Obi Toppin. You know what I mean? And so I think we're seeing not only Julius Randle figure it out on the fly, like Alex alluded to. I also think we're seeing Tibbs figuring it out on the fly. I was at that game versus Cleveland, and when he took Obi out, Obi was pissed. People were mad on social media, but Obi Toppin was mad, physically upset. So everyone is trying to really figure it out. So I'm happy where the Knicks are. Going back to your original question, I'm happy where the Knicks are after just 14 games. Right, because it feels like at some point already during this short amount, the ceiling fell on our heads, right? I feel like at some point already, we were like, okay, the season's over. What are we gonna do, right? We can't score. We don't have a point guard. Everyone's hurt, and already you could see things kind of starting to figure it out. We're definitely not the team that came out in a double overtime win on the season opener versus Celtics, right? And I don't think we're that team that loses to Orlando. And I guess we'll see, right? Because we have Orlando coming in next game too. And that's why I'm hoping this is finally the shift, right? So we finally took care of the Pacers. We kind of got over that little demon. And I believe getting over Orlando and really shutting down Cole Anthony, not letting Terrence Ross do Terrence Ross versus the Knicks things. I think this is going to be another huge confidence boost in this little mini homestands we got.
Yeah, man, we got a 3-game homestand, including last night's victory over the Pacers. Now we got the Magic coming up and the Rockets. I think those 2 games have to be W's. We need to go on a nice 3-game win streak, because then we go on the road, and then I think we have to verse the Lakers back at home, and that's going to be a really interesting game at the Garden. So, yeah, I like what you said, John. I agree with everything you said. Now let's pivot into the future for this team in the next upcoming weeks and what we want to see from the Knicks in terms of adjustments, in terms of, because that double overtime game against the Boston Celtics on the opener, that game told you so much about this team, that they play with heart, they play with intensity, they never quit. And that was one of the games where Knicks fans were like, whoa, like what is this team? Because that felt like a thriller. It felt like a game 7 of a playoff series when it was just an opening game. And it felt like if we lost that opener, we would have lost the entire season for whatever reason. But that's how Knicks fans really view this entire season for us. So what type of adjustments do you guys want to be seen? Because I feel like last night's perspective of the game for me personally is it was an identity win. It was one of those games where the Knicks needed a win like that because it reminded themselves of why they were so good last year and how they're able to get so many wins. Because what did they do? They held the Indiana Pacers to 10 points in the fourth quarter, and I think they did not have a field goal with the last 6 minutes to go. The only points they had was 2 free throws. So that's just unbelievable stuff right there. And if you look at the tape, it wasn't just the Pacers missing shots. The defense was unbelievable. That's the switching that I'm talking about that I love. I'm not saying the Knicks defense, has a switching issue and they shouldn't be switching at all, but there are some times when they do switch and it gives up a wide open three. When the system works and the switching is working, you saw it on full display last night. Late in that fourth quarter, they were on a string. Alec Burks did a great job. Emmanuel Quickley, D. Rose, RJ, Taj Gibson, Randall, all those guys, those subbing in and out, were playing phenomenal defense. And that's what I want to see this Knicks team do for the next couple of games leading up, because that was our identity last year. And to be honest, before last night's game, I was getting very concerned that if the Knicks defense is not what it once was last year, we have a big issue on our hands this season, because that's why the Knicks were the 4th seed last year. It was because of our defense. And real quick, before we get in, we got a nice donation from the Neils Next Door, #LightSkinCP. What do you guys think about Mitch? Should we switch to letting Kemba be Kemba? Do we have any money left for AC? So I appreciate the donation. The Neils Next Door means a lot to the channel. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you, of course. So what do you guys think about Mitch? I'm down. We haven't really talked about Mitchell Robinson yet. He's had a very interesting start to the season. We know that he's been nicked up. A report came out today that Mitch should be ready to go by tomorrow night. Luckily, as we know, he left the game with a sore ankle last night. So he's definitely been, injured a lot of games. He only missed 1 game, though, which is pretty crazy. He feels like Mitch is out for like 5 of these games, but he's been in every single one besides 1. So, Alex, what's your thoughts about Mitchell Robinson? And do you think that he's the future for this Knicks team? Because I think the only thing that's holding him back right now personally is him staying on the floor healthy and continuously getting into shape. Because if Mitchell Robinson can get into shape by the end of the year and he stays on the floor, I think we're going to see an absolute dominant wrecking force in Mitch, in my opinion.
For sure. And first and foremost, shout out to the Neils Next Door. Thanks for bringing the KFTV nickname over here. Really appreciate it. And for Mitch, it's funny that you say it feels like he missed 5 games. It really does feel like he missed 5 games, although he's just missing like halves or like quarters of games because he's going down with like either an ankle injury, he's holding on to his knee, something's happening, and it just keeps putting my heart in my throat. So Mitch, stop doing that. Stop scaring the fans. I think for Mitch, though, he was at the presser today. He lost 10 pounds already. So he's now 270. He went from 280 to 270. He's starting to get back into a groove slowly but surely. He talked about him needing more balance, I think stability-wise while he's on the court. He's been out for such a long time. He hurt his foot. He's a big man. Big men and foot injuries don't really mix well. So it's going to take time for him to come back at full strength, and especially with the added weight that he added on too, right? Because pretty sure that he mentioned he never lifted weights until this offseason. And so to have a frame where you're not lifting weights until for the first time this offseason changes your body dramatically, whether it's just movement-wise, just walking around, what you're carrying, and to do that on the court as well. Like, he added a lot of weight. I think he came in at like 230, 240. To add 40 pounds, that's a lot of weight. So it'll take time for him to get back into the groove of things. The thing is that he just needs to stay healthy. But we'll see, man. It stinks that he keeps getting hurt every single time, because he is the reason that we're going to have a top defense. At the beginning, when we're on that streak, the Knicks were in the top 4 of rim protection, and they're still a good rim protecting team. Don't get me wrong, but he is one of the leading factors for that reason. And if we don't have him, and especially if we have Nerlens Noel, who's also injury prone, going down the stretch of this, it is going to be a nightmare. If Tom Thibodeau preaches, we're going to see Taj Gibson. On the show last night for Knicks Fan TV, they're asking, what about Jericho Sims? Well, Jericho Sims is on a 2-way contract, so he only has 50 games that he can play. And then once he plays 50 games, the team would have to sign him to a full-length contract and get rid of somebody. And I think that would be Wayne Selden. I'm not sure if they want to do that just quite yet. I think they wanted to develop him, have him go over to Westchester and get some more runs in. But, for Mitch, it just comes down to health, man, just getting him back into a groove of things. I think last season was 2 freak incidents. Right now, he's just giving us a lot of scares. Hopefully, he can get through that. And we really need Nerlens Noel back, too.
Yeah, Nerlens is probably the most underrated piece of this team. And that game that we won against Milwaukee, when we came back, his defense on Giannis was unbelievable. So we're missing Nerlens right now. Hopefully he can get back healthy as soon as possible. John, what's your thoughts about Mitchell Robinson? We haven't really talked about him yet on the stream. So what's your overall assessment on him so far this year?
I mean, I love Mitch Robinson. He is the center that every single team, well, not every single team, because some teams like to have offense at center, like an actual, back to the basket. So I'll say a majority of, the modern NBA needs a center or wants a center like Mitch Robinson. So I'm thankful for that. He also, broke the NBA record for field goal percentage because he's always at the rim, getting those boards, putting those putbacks, second chance points, really deflating for, the opposing team. When they stop us on D, they make us take a bad 3-pointer, which we're dying to take this year. And then, Mitch Robinson gets that board and, slips it right in. It's sometimes it's priceless. It's more than just 2 points. So I love Mitch. And personally, I would like to max extend him. No problem. But what do I think about him? I just don't trust him. Like every year there's something else with Mitch that there's an ise, right? Whether it's fouling and then he fixes that, and then he gets injured, then he fixes that, and now he's not in shape and he's going to fix that. Okay. I'm just waiting for it to all come together. But so that I'm not being negative towards Mitch. He's our best, I would say, overall defender. He's definitely our best perimeter defender. He's our most efficient player. He's our best rebounder. He's extremely important to the team. I just don't trust him though. So unfortunately, I believe that our team goes as far as Mitch Robinson actually takes us, because like you said, guys, Mitch Robinson's injury prone, but if you guys go to any Knicks games and, all the fans that are in this chat right now that I'm sure go to Knicks games, Noel, after every single timeout, forget, but like he is literally wrapped up in ice. He has, trainers on him. He's got a medicine ball. He's stretching. So I'm definitely worried about having to rely on Taj Gibson late in the season. So what do I think about Mitch? I love Mitch. He's extremely important to not only the Knicks, but I think, he's an extremely important center in the NBA. Any team would love to have him. But man, I just don't trust him, Richie.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem with Mitch, man, is the injuries that just makes you because I feel like, he's my brother. He's my long lost brother. We both were born the same exact day, like I told you guys, April 1st, 1998. And me and Mitch go way back to the good old days. But no, man, I think the only thing
Marcus
holding
May.
me back,
I feel you, bro.
yeah. But Mitch is just one of those players that I think the injury is the only thing holding him back. And like Alex said, it feels like he's missed the entire season, but he hasn't. He's just been getting nicked up in the middle of games. So hopefully he can get his foot, he can get into shape, because I really feel like he's everything you want in a Tom Thibodeau style center. And then the second part of this question is, should we switch to letting Kemba be Kemba? And that's a good question to ask, because Kemba was Kemba against Charlotte in that first half, and then he kind of came back down to earth. So in the starting lineup, guys, do you think they should hand the keys to Kemba Walker in terms of taking over the game like we know we should? Or should they still, stay within the system and, try to move the ball around? Alex, and what do you think he means by that? By should we switch to letting Kemba being Kemba?
I think it's what you said, Richie. It's, do we let Kemba be the point guard, be the facilitator, be that engine to this team? And I feel like that's a very difficult question to answer, because you don't want to disrupt the balance of what Julius Randle's done for this team so far, right? Last season, Julius Randle earned the title of being the guy for this team and being that leader and being that engine. Now, if we're going to just take that away from him and then put it into Kemba Walker, what does that say about, the coaching staff and the front office? So, these guys are humans. There is egos in this, right? Like, these guys are playing on the highest level of basketball. They believe they're the best of the best, and they want to compete like they're the best of the best. So saying, hey, let's take the keys away from Randle and then say, let's give it to Kemba, who, has arthritis in the knee. We're not sure like how he's going to play. Like it's a little dicey to do. I wouldn't let Kemba fully be Kemba, but I'd let him just what?
Do you think if IQ and Kemba switch roles, right, where everyone's clamoring for IQ to start anyway, and maybe that's what this question means by letting Kemba be Kemba, right? Because like when IQ comes in, we let IQ roll. Like no one says a word to him. You want to shoot threes from 55 feet away, dude? Enjoy. You want to try the floater? Go ahead. You know what I mean? And so, do you think that Kemba would be more comfortable on the bench? And honestly, do you think that IQ would look a lot more like Kemba if he was in the starting lineup, like a little more stagnant? And so, do you think it's more of a product of the lineup rather than the player?
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Yeah,
I feel like the only thing I would say about that is I don't know if D Rose and Kemba would work well together off the bench. Like I feel like you need to have either one or the other on the floor. Like I don't know if Kemba and D Rose would complement each other together. I like that we either have Kemba or D Rose on the court at any given moment. So that's why I don't want to really mess up that dynamic. But at the same time, I want to hand the keys to Quickly. I want him to take over this team. Damn it. He's everything I ever wanted in a young, ascending point guard for this Knicks team. And yes, I said point guard because he's a combo guard, okay? Combo guard. He can do it all. He's not just
he looks like Dame Lillard. I don't know what else to say. He really looks like go watch early Dame Lillard. Like this is what it looks like. It's not what it looks like prime, year 8 Lillard, in the playoffs. No, but like early Dame Lillard, like this is what it is. So I try to quell my expectations as much as possible. But dude, I love everything about IQ. Even like his post game is amazing. His celebration,
celebration, his energy, everything about him is what I've always wanted.
Like he's got a whole vibe to him. Like IQ is just like out here, and he's a culture changer, man. He comes in here, he gets 12 to 15 points off the bench. Like that's a culture change, man.
Yeah, I agree. I think him and Obi are just like their chemistry together. They've grown such a huge relationship together. They're both first-round picks together. They spend the entire summer, working out together. They were in the summer league. I feel like that dynamic of Emmanuel Quickly and Obi Toppin, I think those two might have the best chemistry out of anybody on this team. Like whenever I see Emmanuel Quickly and Obi Toppin run the pick and roll, it's just a thing of beauty. I have so much trust. Like whenever I see Quickly throw up a lob to Obi Toppin, I feel like a proud father or something. I feel like I'm like, yes, like this is what I've been like. I've watched these two develop, and they're like literally the same age as me, so I shouldn't even be saying that. But it's just like the fact that these two.
That's the whole point, though. That's the whole point. Is like you feel such a connection to them because they're like you. They're not like these old, these old men, and they're not these like little young kids. They're just like, oh, like you know the struggle. You know what it is to put work into something, and you know what it is to be frustrated when you don't have the opportunity, right? That you know you deserve, and you've been working hard for, like Obi, man, and like IQ. Like imagine your IQ, like you're coming out after games, like taking shots after the game with the rookies. Like you'll be able to come in the game and change the dynamic of the game. Meanwhile, you're like sitting on the bench, like in the fourth quarter, like not being able to get on the floor, like Obi Toppin, right? Like working all off season, like flying around, on offense, playing D, getting boards, taking offensive charges, which is a new thing that Obi's kind of trying to add to the repertoire this year. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, sounds good, man. You're gonna sit on the bench now, like even though you're like plus 12, like it's frustrating. You know what I mean? So. I just hope that we're able to fix it. And listen, man, we wouldn't be saying a single word about any of this if like Fournier and RJ Barrett and Randle were just efficient. Like they don't need to be dropping 40. If they were just efficient from the floor, we would not be having this conversation because we wouldn't be losing third quarters by 45, and then we wouldn't be relying on our bench so heavily. So
yeah, I agree.
Just the little tiny things go such a long way. We don't need big changes to the lineup, big minute changes like Thibodeau kind of alluded to. I don't think it needs to be anything dramatic. I just think we need to be a little more efficient. If he believes that Fournier can't do it, okay, let's make a change. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I think
and I also think we need to be more consistent as well, because I think we saw flashes of greatness from each player this year in a very small sample size. It has been consistent. Like Fournier to start off the year, he had that 32-point game in the opening night, and then he followed off the next couple games looking really good on that 5-1 start. Same with Kemba Walker. We saw what the offense looks like with the starting lineup, because to start off the year, no one was talking about the starters being an issue. We're like, wow, Kemba and Fournier were the best signings we could possibly imagine. Like, that's how good the Knicks team looked throughout like the first 6 games. And then after the 5-1 start, then the starters started having an issue and the bench was like taking over. And then we see an RJ Barrett, go through 5 games of dropping, 20 plus points in each game. He has a career high 35, 8-6, 6 of 8 from downtown, single-handedly beating the Pelicans. Like, that's the one thing about RJ Barrett that I wanted to see in year 3. Are we ever going to see him take over single-handedly a game and win it for us? And we saw that. It was 1 game this year, but we saw RJ Barrett take over in New Orleans, absolutely hitting clutch shot after clutch shot, shooting off the dribble. Something that we've never seen RJ Barrett do on the Knicks is what we saw in that 1 game, and he had a really, really good stretch. But the problem with RJ right now is he's streaky, and he's still trying to find his consistency. So my point is, I feel like we're seeing flashes from the players. It's just a matter of time, hopefully, where everyone can start getting their flow consistently instead of just like, all right, Fournier's good for this week, RJ's good for that week, and then Kemba, and then Randle. Like, we need it all clicking at once. And I think as the season progresses, it will all click. I mean, that's just me being hopeful. So, Alex, what's your thoughts about RJ? Because I know John talked about RJ. I didn't really hear your thoughts about his season so far. Like I just mentioned, he started off the season, a little steady. Then he went on that crazy, hot streak, just absolutely super efficient, playing lockdown defense. We all know what the numbers were. And then right now he's in a little sluggish performance, even though last night was super impressive of what he did in the second half. So what's your thoughts about RJ Barrett so far this year?
I think for RJ, right, you said it that, he's young. I'm going to start with this. He's 21 years old. He's very young. He's very, very young.
Youngest player on the team.
Youngest player on the team, very young. He now can he can buy a beer in this country or buy whatever drink he wants. It's going to take time for him. Most players are going to take 4 or 5 years to get into their footing. Most guys don't reach their prime until they're 26 years old.
Julius Randle.
Yeah, Julius Randle. Look, we can just look around the league, right? A lot of guys are trying to figure out if they're older. And I think for RJ, like, we're going to see the struggles. We're going to see this one. It's, once again, the starting unit just trying to try to gel together. But really for him, it's just trying to find his footing on what type of player he is. We don't really even know what type of player RJ is. When you say, if I said DeMar DeRozan, you're like, oh, mid-range shooter who's very crafty. Like, that probably comes to your mind. If I say, when I say, if I say Lonzo Ball right now, you're probably thinking, oh, playmaker. Guy's got great vision, can shoot right now from behind the arc, which he could do, which he did at UCLA. Those are the types of things when you think of these guys. Yeah, defense. When you think about RJ and you think about what he did at Duke, we're waiting for him to see what he did at Duke and to take it to the NBA level. Usually when guys are scouting, that basic skill set is what you want to see transferred into the NBA. So we know he can do some playmaking. We know he can be a bully ball type player, just taking it to the rack. We know he can draw fouls. We just want to see it on a consistent basis. And I think for him, it's just figuring out how to play with this starting unit, getting into like some sort of offensive rhythm. You see that he's sometimes a little too timid with everyone out there. He lets Julius kind of cook. He lets Kemba kind of cook. He doesn't really call for the ball as much as he probably should have. He wants to be a defensive guy, so he's probably focusing on that. I think there's a lot that he's putting on his plate, but it's just going to take time for him. I have a lot of faith in him. As I said, like, I wrote something for KFTV about being patient with RJ. His last season, it took until like game 12, 13 for him to really become that 40% shooter. And it's probably going to take that type of rhythm again for him to get type of like length to get into that type of rhythm again. So I'm not surprised. He usually starts off cold. He talked about him starting off cold at the beginning of the season. It'll just take some time for him to figure out his rhythm.
Yeah, man.
This year he started at 13 3/4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think the whole RJ situation is really interesting. Hopefully he can start getting more consistent. And it's also, and you alluded to it, Alex, at the end of your take on RJ, is the offense around him. It doesn't feel like he is assertive enough for my opinion, for my liking. Obviously Randle's going to be the guy, the number one option for the starting unit. But there's some times where I'd rather see RJ. And that's why that New Orleans Pelicans game always stays in the back of my mind, because that was one game where Randle actually took a step back and he allowed RJ to take over. And we saw what the game was, because if you guys remember that Pelicans game, not only did RJ hit clutch shot after clutch shot, but he was playmaking. They put the ball in his hands. He was, coming off of pick and rolls. He was feeding Taj Gibson down low for a clutch assist. He was playing great defense. Like, that's the one thing about RJ where I feel like sometimes we're not giving him an opportunity to develop properly, where we're icing him out. We're not giving him the proper opportunity. But then there is some times where we give him the opportunity. He does turn the ball over. He does drive to the rim and he misses through contact. Like, I feel like the biggest thing for him is consistency. And that's something that he needs to start developing over the rest of his career. And I still feel like and I'm happy that you brought it up, Alex, because people forget that RJ is only 21. He's the youngest player on the team. It feels like he's been in the league forever. This is year number 3. This is a big season for him. And I think that he's the biggest X factor for the starters, because we all know what Julius is going to bring to the table, because he's established. He's not really going to be developing anymore. I do think that Julius is in his prime, but RJ is still a work in progress. He's still developing. He's still getting better. He's still going to go through a lot of dry spells, and he's just going to be learning from his mistakes as the season progresses. I just hope that he continues to have that aggressive mindset. That's something that I really hopeful that he does not stop. I really do not want to see the confidence get sucked away from him. And I want to make sure that he always attacks the rim, because we saw in that 5-game skid, he was finishing through contact with ease and ones with the right hand, with the left hand, taking people off the dribble. Like, he shows it. It's just a matter of him putting it all together and doing it on a consistent basis. That's what Knicks fans are for sure waiting to see. So, guys, we're going to be wrapping up today's stream. We appreciate everybody in the chat tuning in that were giving us all the support. Kelvin, Peter, what's good, man? Jamal, everybody in the chat. Carl, what's good, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Knicks Media live stream with Alex and John. Before we end off the stream, we're going to go around the table one more time, give our final takes about this Knicks team and what you want to see from them for the next couple of games coming up against the Magic, against the Rockets, and then we got a big one against the Lakers. So, Alex, we'll start off with you. What do you want to see this Knicks team, adjustment-wise, really dive into? Like, how do you want them to get on a winning streak? Do you want them to continue what they did last night with the defense? Do you want to see them get into a rhythm, 3-point shooting? Like, overall, you don't have to get too in detail, but what do you want to see them build on for the next couple of weeks?
Defense, definitely, because that's been our calling card with the Tom Thibodeau team. I think the offense will come. I think that 3-point shooting will come back around at some point. And then just consistency, man, effort and energy. Like, the stars keep preaching that we need to come out with more energy. Well, keep doing it. Come out with energy. They did it yesterday. Keep that momentum going.
I agree, man. I agree. John, how about you, man?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, we nitpick the Knicks because we cover them, but a lot of, MVP caliber players coming into the season are still playing themselves into shape. Luka, even Tatum, and, Randle is probably one of those guys. So I'm just hoping that in these next couple games, we're able to get it together, right? We have Orlando at home. That's a revenge game for us. We better shut down Orlando at home. And then we have this weird Saturday 5:00 game versus the Rockets at home, our third game of the homestand, right before we go on a 1-game business trip to Chicago. Man, for me, what I want to see is that we don't overlook this Rockets team and we don't get trapped in the trap and we actually show up, right? Because we play tomorrow and then we're off until Saturday, and then we have the one Bulls game before the Lakers come back into town. Then we have the Suns, like big matchups coming up. So the only game that doesn't really, and Magic here, we have Fournier, we got Terrence Ross, we got Cole Anthony, and of course last game. The only game that doesn't really matter here is the Rockets, sorry. So for me, I need them to take care of the Magic. I need them to not get trapped versus the Rockets, and I need them to play competitive in Chicago. Like, go have a business trip. Like, if you win, you win. You don't. But just show me effort, like Alex is talking about. Show me consistency in that game. But I'm telling you, my mind, at least for like whatever season we're in for this quarter, right? Or like game 16, 17, however game it feels like, it's gonna make a real difference for me how we show up in that Rockets game, because it's so easy for us to just not care, right? They stink. It's the middle of a Saturday. We're about to have a bunch of big games that we actually care about. Juggernauts coming through. It's going to show me a lot about if this team cares about their schedule or they're just trying to play ball. You know what I mean? Some Thibodeau Knicks basketball on Saturday at the Garden. Like, let's just kill this Rockets team and go with some momentum. That's what I'm really hoping for.
I agree. I couldn't have said it better. We got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat because that's how you get a high seed in the Eastern Conference. That's exactly what the Knicks will do, hopefully, because if we can go on a 3-game win streak at home, that's really big because we've been not defending home court at all this year.
Yeah.
I think our record is like 5-2 on the road or something like that. We're still, I think last night's victory helped us out. I think now we're 3-4 at home or something like that. So the Knicks at home has not been good. We have a really easy schedule for at least the next 2 games coming up where the Knicks got to take care of business. And then we got some tough matchups that the Knicks beat the Chicago Bulls once, but the Bulls are better than when we saw them because they're getting a lot of good chemistry. They're a very good team in the East. And then at home, when we debut the city jerseys against the Lakers, I wish I could go to that game, but that's way too expensive. But guys, shout out to everybody in the chat. John and Alex, it's always a pleasure having you on the stream. You guys are always welcome to come on. Hopefully next time you guys are on, whether it's a couple weeks from now or a month from now, the Knicks are, all the way at the top, and we could be talking about positive things, and Randle's back to being a superstar, and all these things are clicking, and Kemba's this, and Quickly's that. Hopefully by the next time we talk, we'll be looking good, better than we are now, even though Knicks fans should be content right now. There's nothing really that much to complain about, but it does feel like the world collapsed on our heads a little bit, even though we are 8-6. So again, guys, shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure you smash that like button for your boy, and I'll catch you guys in the next stream. Peace out, and let's go.